You're listening to the newest podcast in Goshen County, Why It Matters, brought to you exclusively by Goshen Economic Development. We'll dive into the reasons why economic development is so important in our community and talk one-on-one with members who explain the benefits that economic development provides. Now, here's your host, Goshen Economic Development CEO, Braden Konar.
Hello, this is Braden Konar, CEO of Goshen Economic Development, and this is the second episode of Why It Matters. Today on our podcast or radio show, we have Lisa Johnson, who is now the CEO of Orbis Advantage in LaGrange, her own company out there in LaGrange, and she brings us a wealth of knowledge because she was once the CEO, Executive Director of Goshen County Economic Development Corporation. How many years ago?
Oh, we started off with a tough question. I think it's been about 8 years or maybe closer to 10 years, actually, because I've been with Orbis. I started it in 2017, and I worked for the Wyoming Business Council for a couple of years prior to that. So it was about 2014 or 15 when I left the Goshen Economic Development.
Wow. And so you mentioned Orbis. Mm-hmm. So tell everyone about Orbis. What do you do, services you offer, that type of thing? Okay,
well, thanks for that question. Orbis Advantage is a business and marketing consulting firm based in LaGrange, Wyoming. And Orbis means compass in Latin. So we like to help our clients navigate the marketing or business strategy issues that they're facing. We've also done some public affairs work in the past. We lobbied for agriculture and economic development and education issues at the Wyoming legislature. And so we now work with a variety of clients, from private companies who are needing feasibility studies to justify an investment in expansion, or we've done work for community colleges and other public clients as well.
So I'm going to take this a little bit off the record because something hit me when you were talking through that and how important rural broadband is. You are located in LaGrange, Wyoming. I believe Visionary has fiber in LaGrange, Wyoming. And so 30 miles south of Torrington, 40 or 50 miles from Cheyenne, 40 or 50 miles from Scottsbluff, Nebraska, you are out there and you have better internet connectivity than a lot of places, and you're running a business with clients all over the state, all over the nation, whatever. And I mean, to me, that just seems like a huge benefit to your business.
Well, you're right. Broadband is so important, and our office is located in the LaGrange Heritage Square, which is the former high school building in LaGrange. And the investment in improving broadband in our state was so important. And you're right, we do have fiber right to that building that allows us to do video conferencing. It's just second nature. And I remember, Braden, when I started the business in 2017, it was a big deal to give somebody an 800 number and say, hey, let's have a conference call. And times have changed so fast. And connectivity is so important. Technology is just ever changing. And it's an exciting time to be in business in Goshen County. It really is.
Truly. I mean, I think we look back on COVID and it's negative. I mean, for the vast majority of people, the COVID pandemic was not a highlight in anybody's life. But I think a silver lining from that was the connectivity dollars that were utilized in rural America, mm-hmm. so that you could have a business like you have a long ways from anywhere, mm-hmm. and be able to access better, reliable internet, and how important that is to businesses nowadays. I mean, you think back 20 years ago, internet connectivity wasn't like the big thing. And now, I mean, internet connectivity is a huge thing in business nowadays.
You're right. And the internet connectivity is just another foundation of infrastructure investment. And if we're investing in infrastructure in our communities, then we can attract those kinds of businesses that can do business anywhere. And I don't want to do business anywhere else. I am happily married to a rancher that's a fourth generation LaGrange community ranch. And I want to be out there helping him when I can, and then still doing business in the world.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I mean, my wife and I moved to Torrington in 2019, and we moved from Cheyenne, where we had, I think, fiber internet. I'm not really sure. And I mean, we plugged into the wall, right? Mm-hmm. And so then we moved to Torrington, and CenturyLink was an option, but everybody told me to stay away from CenturyLink. Our other option was Visionary, and it was like through the airwaves, and it worked pretty well. But I think now, like, we look at where we're at now, and Torrington, I mean, VistaBeam, Visionary, Vive are all in Torrington, like, fighting for market share. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you talk about competition and those types of things, like, that's a good thing for the consumer. And Torrington, Goshen County has much more internet connectivity in here now than it did 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that's a huge win for Goshen County, a huge win for the residents. And I think when you have those companies here and competing for that market share, that keeps your costs lower. And so you're getting the best product for as cheap as possible.
You're right. And I know, and you also can appreciate that broadband connectivity was a high priority for Goshen economic development. And so now we're seeing the benefits of that work. Yeah.
And I mean, that was huge when Ashley was here. And yeah, I mean, they're like the fruits of their labor, right? Mm-hmm. And so, sorry to get off on a tangent there, but it hit me.
It's all important.
Yeah. And so you were a part of Goshen economic development kind of at the beginning-ish of the quarter-cent sales tax. You weren't there when it first got passed, but you were there. You were there for a couple of campaigns.
Right.
So this radio show is called Why It Matters. Mm-hmm. So the quarter cent, we just got through a campaign. So to you, your background, what you went through, why did it matter then? And I think we can elaborate on even more of why it matters now.
You bet. So it's always a good thing to appreciate your history and to look back and see how far you've come. And Goshen County was the first county in Wyoming to pass an optional economic development sales tax. It was a quarter penny. In 2006 was the first year they passed that sales tax. And I think and that was before I had started with Goshen economic development, but I have done a lot of research about the history of it, and just with talking with some of the board members and community members that were involved at the time, they could really demonstrate the need. And people in Goshen County are proud of Goshen County. They want to invest in the community. They are proud to support local businesses, and they just needed more job opportunities in the county. And I think that's probably why it passed that time in 2006. Just really quickly, it wasn't the first time they tried something like that, but it was the first time they ran a campaign when they had the enabling legislation that allowed a tax to be dedicated for economic development purposes. But in looking at the history of Goshen economic development, years before that, there was an effort to have an optional, like a fifth penny tax, and that the county and the communities said, hey, let's earmark some of that for economic development. And there was a big campaign that moved forward for that purpose, and it was unsuccessful. And so when communities look at Goshen County and say, hey, how were you able to do that? I always say, don't give up. Try it. And if it doesn't pass the first time, try again. Because it takes time to garner support and educate people about how it can be a benefit to the community. So fast forward then, by 2008, we could have renewed it again. Because once the tax is passed the first time, then you can renew it in 2 years. You have the option to vote to renew it. And at that time, the board said, no, we didn't really have enough successes to show. And so they chose to wait. So it was 2010. So it had been 4 years since the tax was first passed. And by that time, we had started the Progress Program, which is what Goshen County is known for. And we were able to really demonstrate that I think two things, demonstrate that we had used the money wisely to invest in every community in the county, and that we had leveraged both public and private dollars. So there was truly a return on investment.
Yeah, and I think even nowadays, like, when we were going through our campaign, we talked about leveraging dollars, and I think if I remember correctly, like our capital matching program, which is our program that we put out to the business community to utilize for whatever that is, whether it's facade, signage, etc. And that money had been leveraged like 23 or 25 to 1. So for every dollar of public dollars, so of economic quarter cent for economic development money invested in a project, there was 25 private dollars on top of that. And so it's a huge leveraging ratio that I think is very important. I think it shows the wise investment of those project dollars. And
You're right.
It's been a huge success, at least in my mind. Mm-hmm. And so I guess from your standpoint, why does it matter today? Why, you always try to think of how do you make this thing better? How do we continue to improve? But the Progress Program has kind of stood the test of time, and it continues to be beneficial. Is it as beneficial as it was 10 years ago? I don't know, but I do think that it's still beneficial. I think that communities and businesses alike are still open to the opportunity, still applying for the opportunity. And so, from your standpoint as the past director, as a business owner, mm-hmm. That has utilized Progress Program, mm-hmm. Why does it matter today?
Well, I think it's just you're making resources available. And whenever you're approaching economic development, I think it's important to try to give a little bit of incentive. You're trying to show innovation. You're trying to encourage other activities to happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. So it's still important just to attract attention, for one thing. It's showing that the community invests in their community. It's what makes it a good place to live and do business. So those are just a couple of thoughts off the top of my head. You mentioned the Progress Program is tried and true, but the quarter cent for economic development has been used in other ways than the Progress Program.
Right.
The Progress Program is what we developed to bring some structure and to bring some objectivity. One of the things I was thinking about earlier today in preparing for this discussion with you is how many people are involved in making those decisions. It's not just you. It's not just your staff. It's not just a handful of board members. You have people involved on committees that vet these projects, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have community members that are a part of committees, and what the Progress Program Committee, there are community members that sit on that committee that make a recommendation to the board. And mm-hmm. the board obviously has the final say. But yeah, it gets vetted numerous times by numerous eyeballs. And the board of directors this last month decided that they want applicants to come forward and present their projects to the committee. They want, instead of it just like being a paper application submitted to the staff, they want the entity to be more involved in the process so that those questions can be face-to-face or Zoomed, if you will, and discuss these things, like get a better understanding, because who knows your project better than you?
Right.
And so there's only so much you can portray about your project through paper. And so yeah, I think moving forward, that's a significant betterment to that program.
Yeah, like a little Shark Tank in Goshen County.
Correct. Right. So
good.
I definitely appreciate that. And I think that, the quarter cent, truly for the longest time stood it by itself. Like it kind of put Goshen County ahead of everybody else in the state of Wyoming when it came to economic development. And,
Yes.
our state leaders saw it, the Wyoming Business Council saw it, and other counties and communities are jealous of it. I mean, I bet I get, I don't know, 5 or 6 emails a year about how did you do this? Mm-hmm. And so, Fremont County got it done. They're a half cent, but theirs looks a lot different than ours. Mm-hmm. A lot different. Mm-hmm. And
that's okay, because economic development is different in every community.
Right.
So that's great for them to approach it their way. In Goshen County, we approach it differently. But you just said something a couple of minutes ago about it raised awareness. So the quarter cent for economic development has allowed Goshen County to be on a higher playing field, kind of level the field and compete against bigger communities, because you've got the money to do marketing and to attract attention, to let people outside this community know about the business opportunities and the industrial sites and things that are here. So it's important to be able to raise your flag and draw attention to Goshen County.
Totally. I totally agree. I mean, there are things in this community that I don't know that we would have without an entity like economic development. And I think one of those is the Cobblestone Hotel. Mm-hmm. Just off the top of my head, I think one of those is the Cobblestone Hotel. Yeah. And the work that not only the board of directors, but Ashley Harpstreet and whoever else, I mean, I wasn't here at that point, but whoever else was a part. And, I think that's something that we all should be proud of. And so,
right.
I think we've definitely hit our time limit.
Okay.
So I appreciate you coming in and visiting with me today. And,
thank you.
For all you listeners, don't forget to check out Orbis Advantage. Lisa puts out some really cool stuff on social media. Sign up for her email. She's got a great business going out there. And so I know that me personally and my staff at Economic Development wouldn't be where we are without the support of her. So definitely check out Orbis Advantage, and we'll be talking to you next time.
All righty.